The studio was silent except for the hum of cameras. 6 million Americans watched their screens waiting. Rachel Morgan, CBS's legendary investigative journalist, sat between two people who had spent 3 weeks lying. Jessica Henderson, 32, trembled in her seat. Her boyfriend, Marcus Cole, 38, stared at the floor. The evidence was overwhelming. The text messages were damning. The autopsy was horrifying. And now, under the unforgiving studio lights, the walls were closing in. When the confession finally came, it shattered what was left of America's faith in humanity. But to understand how it got to this point, the story must start where it ended, with a 9-year-old boy trapped in a burning house. November 12, 2018, Riverside County, California. Dawn was breaking over the quiet, suburban neighborhood when the 911 call came through at 6:47 a.m. Jessica Henderson's voice was hysterical. Her house was burning. Her son was inside. Firefighters arrived 7 minutes later to find a small wooden cottage engulfed in flames. Black smoke poured into the morning sky. Jessica stood in the front yard, screaming. Marcus held her back as she allegedly tried to run toward the fire. Inside the cottage, in the back bedroom, firefighters found what they were dreading. 9-year-old Liam Henderson lay curled in the corner, lifeless. His small body suggested he had tried to hide from the flames. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial report was straightforward. Electrical fire in old wiring. Tragic accident. Mother and boyfriend barely escaped. Young boy didn't make it out in time. Local news covered it briefly. There were no red flags. No reasons to suspect anything darker. Except one person refused to believe it. Liam's father, David Henderson. David and Jessica had divorced 3 years earlier in a bitter custody battle. Jessica won primary custody. David got every other weekend. He hadn't seen his son in 2 weeks before the fire. When he received the call that Liam was dead, David drove straight to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department with a story that made Detective Sarah Martinez sit up and listen. 2 weeks before the fire, Liam had called his father, crying. The boy said Marcus was hurting him, hitting him with belts, locking him in his room for hours. When David confronted Jessica, she dismissed it as lies and acting out from the divorce. David had reported it to Child Protective Services. They conducted a home visit. Jessica and Marcus denied everything. Liam was too terrified to speak in front of them. The case was closed within days. Now the boy was dead and David demanded a full autopsy. Detective Martinez agreed. What came back 2 days later changed everything. Dr. Jennifer Park had performed thousands of autopsies in her 20-year career. The report she compiled on Liam Henderson made her physically ill. Cause of death, smoke inhalation, consistent with the fire. But the rest painted a horror story. Multiple healed fractures on both arms, 2 to 4 weeks old. Extensive bruising on the back, buttocks, and legs in various stages of healing. Burn marks on the palms, not from the house fire, but older, deliberate. Signs of blunt force trauma to the head causing a subdural hematoma. And evidence of sexual abuse with an object, likely within days of death. The most damning detail, no soot in Liam's lungs. He was already dead or dying when the fire started. Someone had set that fire to destroy evidence. Within hours, the case was reclassified as homicide. Detective Martinez assembled her team the morning after the autopsy results arrived. The case had transformed from accident to murder, and they needed to prove it. She spread the evidence across the table. Multiple healed fractures, burn marks, sexual abuse, and the critical detail, no soot in Liam's lungs. He was already dead when the fire started. The investigation split into 2 directions. Background checks and physical evidence. Detective Rodriguez pulled Marcus Cole's criminal history. The results were alarming. Marcus, 38 and unemployed, had convictions for assault, domestic violence, and drug possession. Most disturbing was his 2010 sex offender registration for statutory rape of a 15-year-old girl computer. Forensics revealed Marcus frequented online forums about harsh child discipline. 2 months before Liam's death, he'd posted asking for stronger correction methods for a difficult stepchild. Detective Chen investigated Jessica Henderson. She found substance abuse history, including 2 overdose hospitalizations. Police had responded to domestic violence calls. At her home 7 times during her marriage to David. Most damning, 4 separate CPS reports over 3 years. Teachers noticed bruises. Neighbors heard screaming. David reported Marcus locking Liam in a closet. Each time, CPS investigated briefly and closed the case. Jessica and Marcus always had explanations. Liam was too scared to speak. The system had failed him 4 times. Neighbor interviews revealed more. Elderly Patricia Gomez saw Marcus dragging, crying. "Liam into the cottage days before the fire," she heard shouting. For hours, but didn't call police. She thought it was just discipline. Another neighbor witnessed Marcus burning something in a barrel 2 days after the fire. The search warrant uncovered critical evidence. In Marcus's truck, a wooden rod covered in Liam's blood. In the cottage ruins, cleaning supplies purchased the day before. Bleach, ammonia rubber gloves, but the most devastating evidence came from Jessica's deleted text messages, which forensics recovered. November 10th at 6:23 p.m., Marcus, "The kid won't stop crying. I'm about to lose control." November 10th, 6:31 p.m., Jessica, "Do what you have to do. Just keep him quiet. David can't find out." November 11th, 11:47 p.m., Marcus, "I think I went too far this time." November 11th, 11:52 p.m., Jessica, "What did you do?" November 11th, 11:58 p.m., Marcus, "He's not moving." Then silence. At 2:14 a.m. on November 12th, Marcus searched Google. How to start a fire to look like an accident. At 6:47 a.m., Jessica called 911 Detective Martinez. Reviewed the complete picture. The wooden rod. The messages showing conspiracy. The search history proving cover-up intent. The autopsy proving Liam died before the fire. The neighbor testimonies the abuse. History, everything, pointed to the same conclusion. Marcus Cole had tortured and killed Liam Henderson with Jessica's knowledge and approval. Together they burned the cottage to hide the murder. Time to bring them in. 6 days after Liam's death, Detective Martinez and her team arrived at the Henderson residence with arrest warrants. Marcus was home alone. He didn't resist. He immediately offered to make a deal. At the station, Marcus laid out the horrifying truth. He admitted to disciplining Liam harshly because Jessica said the boy needed to learn respect. He confessed to the sexual abuse, calling it punishment that Jessica had suggested. On the night Liam died, Marcus had hit the boy with the wooden rod because he wouldn't stop crying. Liam fell, struck his head on the floor, and stopped moving. Jessica told Marcus they had to make it look like an accident. They had to burn the cottage. Jessica was arrested at her workplace an hour later. Unlike Marcus, she immediately requested a lawyer and refused to speak. The case exploded across national news. Mother and boyfriend, charged in 9-year-olds. Torture and murder became the headline. Dominating every outlet, David Henderson held a tearful press conference, explaining how he'd tried to save his son, but nobody had listened to Liam's cries for help. Public outrage was immediate and fierce. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse. The hashtag Justice for Liam trended for days. A GoFundMe for David's legal expenses raised $400,000 in 72 hours. But Jessica and Marcus's defense attorneys were preparing their cases. Marcus claimed Jessica had coerced him. Jessica claimed she was an abuse victim herself, with no knowledge of what Marcus was doing to her son. The prosecution needed more than conflicting stories and text messages. They needed an ironclad confession. That's when Rachel Morgan got involved. Rachel Morgan had built her career on getting the truth from people who desperately wanted to hide it. Her show, Truth and Justice, had helped solve 14 cold cases through her interviewing techniques. She proposed something unprecedented to the Riverside County DA. Let her interview Jessica and Marcus on live television with the DA's approval. The DA agreed. Jessica's lawyer advised against it. But Jessica insisted she wanted to tell her side. Marcus overruled his lawyer's objections, claiming he wanted people to know the whole truth. The interview was scheduled for December 10th, 2018, exactly 4 weeks after Liam's death. December 10th, 2018, 8:00 p.m. EST. The CBS studio was packed with crew, legal observers, and law enforcement. Rachel Morgan sat between Jessica Henderson and Marcus Cole. 6 million viewers watched live. David Henderson watched from home, his hands clenched. Rachel began methodically. She asked Jessica about the neighbors' reports of screaming, about the teachers who'd noticed bruises, about Liam's own reports to his father. Jessica maintained she hadn't known, that Liam had behavioral issues, that she'd thought the bruises were from playing. Rachel turned to Marcus, who admitted he'd hit Liam with the wooden rod, locked him in his room, and assaulted him sexually. Then Rachel asked the critical question, had Jessica known? Marcus's answer was simple and devastating. Yes. Jessica's composure cracked. She denied it, but Rachel produced the text messages. The ones where Jessica told Marcus to do what he had to do. The ones from the night Liam died when Marcus said the boy wasn't moving and Jessica didn't call for help. Rachel pressed harder. Jessica's son was dead or dying, and instead of calling 911, she'd help stage the fire. Jessica broke completely. Through tears, she admitted she'd panicked when Marcus told her Liam wasn't moving. She confessed she hadn't stopped Marcus from setting the fire. She'd stood in the yard and played the grieving mother for the cameras while knowing exactly what had happened. Rachel turned back to Marcus and asked why he'd done it. Marcus's response was emotionless. Jessica had told him to. She'd said Liam was ruining her life. She'd said if Marcus could make the boy behave, or if he was gone, they could finally be happy together. The studio was frozen. America watched in horror. Rachel looked into the camera and announced that the Riverside County DA was present and would be taking both suspects into custody. Immediately following the broadcast, they were arrested on set. The trial began in March 2019. The defense attempted to argue the confessions were coerced, that Rachel Morgan had manipulated two vulnerable people on live television. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. On April 22, 2019, both defendants were found guilty of first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. Marcus Cole received life without parole. Jessica Henderson received 50 years to life. At sentencing, David Henderson delivered a victim impact statement about his son who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist, whose whole life had been stolen by the two people who should have protected him. Jessica sobbed throughout. Marcus never looked up. The judge called it one of the most heinous crimes the court had ever seen, the deliberate torture and murder of a defenseless child by his own mother and her boyfriend. Both would die in prison, which the judge noted was still more mercy than they'd shown Liam. David Henderson founded Liam's Voice, a non-profit dedicated to child abuse prevention and advocacy. The organization successfully lobbied for stricter child protection laws in California, including Liam's Law, which mandates abuse training for all teachers and childcare workers, faster CPS response times, and harsher penalties for failing to report suspected abuse. Every November 12, David visits his son's grave with a toy dinosaur and reads a letter promising Liam's death wasn't in vain. Marcus Cole is incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran, in protective custody after being attacked twice by other inmates. Child abusers are universally despised in prison. Jessica Henderson is at Central California Women's Facility. She's reportedly found religion and claims to be changed. David has publicly stated he will never forgive her. Rachel Morgan's interview won a Peabody Award and an Emmy when critics questioned the ethics of the live confession. Morgan defended her methods. 2 child killers were in prison because of that interview, and she'd do it again without hesitation. Liam Henderson was 9 years old. He loved dinosaurs. He wanted to be a paleontologist. He called his father for help, and the system failed him. His story changed laws. It changed lives. And it serves as a brutal reminder that monsters don't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes they live in your house. Sometimes they're the people who claim to love you. When children say they're being hurt, the world must listen, because the next call might come too late. Liam deserved better. Every child does.